my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator for the State of the Industry, Stephen Adams. Stephen is an award-winning producer and founding partner of Alta Global Media. Stephen's brokered major deals, including a 3-picture deal with Netflix for South African director Manma Dube. And he's also collaborated with Spike Lee on acclaimed projects and has a background in visual effects for films like Avatar. He's a member of BAFTA and the Producers Guild of America. And take it away.
In a very brief time, so I'm going to jump right into this topic. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves and talk about what the heck they do. Because Mike?
Stephen.
All right. Look at that.
They were very quick. They were on it.
All right.
They were like microphone. Okay.
We can get this one on. Hello.
1, 2.
Oh, I guess I have to turn it on first. That would help. Hello.
This is the first panel of the day, right? I think it was.
I'm still rambling.
Oh, okay.
I'm still rambling on. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, before we start, actually, I'm going to ask a question. How many of the audience are from Europe?
Excellent.
Okay, so this will help guide the conversation. How many are from the United States? Anybody from Asia?
Excellent.
And working in the Middle East, perhaps?
Nina,
And the African continent.
there you go.
So I think we're going to talk about all those things, but I think with an emphasis on the European-American alliance. So we'll start there. So Effie,
Yes.
please break it down. Who
Hey,
are you? What do
who
you
am
do?
I? That's
Yes.
so much like my therapist, let me say. Hi, my kind of, I'm like, you don't want to know. My name's Effie Brown. I am the CEO of a company called Game Changer Films. We're a finance, development, and production company that focuses on women, people of color, LGBTQ+, and people with disability. I know, we're one of those. What? I produce films like But I'm a Cheerleader, to Jane Campion's In the Cut, to Dear White People, to recently co-financing The Inspection with Elegance Bratton. And I'm very happy to be here. That was quick.
I love it. Efficient.
There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm David Lancaster. I have a company called Rumble Films, and I'm an independent producer from soup to nuts, I guess they'd call it. I'm on my 51st movie now.
Awesome. There you go. That deserves a clap. I gotta say, that's a lot.
So, produced, I've been doing this for 35 years. It's, I guess I'm probably known more for Whiplash and Nightcrawler and Drive and Eye in the Sky.
Great movies.
I have
That's
an
right.
amazing movie.
Oh, we did that
Nomination as
Yes.
well, so that's important. Chandler.
Hi, I'm Chandler Hines Lown. I'm COO of FilmHedge. We're a senior debt lender. We cash flow MGs, pre-sales tax credits, a little bit of gap. We receive about $1 billion or over $1 billion worth of qualified deal flow a year, and we finance about 50 films, finance and underwrote about 50 films. There you go. Like that. There you go. Clap for money.
Mohammed.
Pretty hard to go after these people, but I'll try. Anyway, so I'm Mohammed Hafzi. I'm a film producer. Started as a screenwriter back in Egypt. I make films with mostly local talent. Got into distribution a few years ago. Started Film Clinic, my company, in 2005, which started as a development pipeline mainly. Then got into producing in 2007, and I've been producing mainly since, with films that maybe some of you might have known, probably very few of you, and about 55, 60 films in the past 20 years or so.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's it.
I think.
I'm having so there we go. I'm having so many strange problems. So we're talking about the state of the industry, state of finance. Let's start with the state of the industry. You know, in the last 5 years, we've seen unprecedented shifts in our business across the globe, from the rise of streaming, the overspending of streaming, the contraction of streaming, and with that contraction of streaming, a contraction of budgets, and then also fewer places for distribution to land. Not to mention the fact that theatrical is evaporating, at least in the United States. It's still functioning in other parts of the world, but it's challenged because most people are watching the content here. So there's so many factors to this change, and then we throw AI into the mix as well, which is nibbling around all sorts of areas. So that's a complicated arena, and we've also been taking all this on during a global pandemic. So not strike and strikes.
Yeah.
So this has been a kind of a crazy, tumultuous moment. But I always remind myself, as a student of film, that this is not the first time film has been challenged. If you were somebody who was invested in Nickelodeons, for example, and full-length features came along, there went your business. When sound came along, that knocked out a lot of people, and then color challenged people, and then television, and then cable. So what we have is, and then at one point, I think 60 years ago, film was declared dead in the early 70s, and yet somehow the artists brought it back, and then taught corporations how to make money, and here we are. So I mean, there's so many things to look at in terms of repeating patterns, and the fact that those who are clever do survive, have done so and thrived in it as well, and artists, I think, always leading the way. So, rambling on about all that stuff, but I think it sets the stage for sort of the moment that we're in right now. So, how are you navigating all that?
Failure is not an option. That's how I mean, I know it sounds very pithy, but I have to, right? There's no other choice. I believe in that filmmaking and storytelling is my form of activism. It's actually my form of business. Do you know what I mean? So financially, and I think that it's for the greater good. There's, and I've also know, like being black and a woman, it's been really easy for us. Totally kidding. Do you know what I mean? They love in the United States. They love us now. So it's a joke, like that. It's always been difficult. I don't think I'm in an industry where it's been like easy for anybody. Has it been easy for you? I'm like this. I'm like, you've done like wonderful movies. Can you help me? No. Okay, good. But failure's not an option. And you do what you love, and I feel it's for a greater good and a greater purpose. And hopefully, not only it's for me, I feel inclusion and diversity and good storytelling. That's very important. Good storytelling is good business.
And a lot of times when people hear diversity and inclusion, especially in the United States,
Did you guys stop
they think
listening?
that agenda is first and foremost.
No, I mean, personally, and again, I'm seeing it from my perspective. I've always been a woman. I've always been a woman of color. Get out of here. So I want to see, when I growing up and looking at films, you want to identify and be able to see yourself back, whatever that may mean. I believe in a big tent, so for women, people of color, LGBTQ, people with disability, I'm like, let's all be in the movies. We all like to genre. We all like action. We all want to see ourselves in these stories. And I found that through my career, from But I'm a Cheerleader to Real Women Have Curves to, the films that I've done have had some success, and they've all been with these types of quote unquote, our marginalized groups, but they've also made, I feel, great impact. I mean, not whiplash impact. Do you know what I mean? Or drive impact, but impact, so I'm like, I want to see, what I mean? So.
Well, you mentioned pattern recognition.
Yes.
I find that really interesting because that's what AI essentially is.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we battle to try and make original stories, we have to remember that breaking the pattern is what makes humanity. Mm-hmm. And I feel as though there's only so far that we can assume that AI will help us, which it most certainly does. Mm-hmm. There's engines that will break a script down, tell you what's working, what isn't. It'll do all your locations, your costumes. It'll break down everything just like an AD will do.
I mean, I'm going to interrupt you because some of those programs can take literally 2 minutes to do all that.
In 2 minutes.
And storyboard. It's mind-boggling.
So it's fascinating, and but I do think that, and I will sort of cite an example for me, which was Nightcrawler. I don't know how many you have ever seen that film, but
yes.
That script is essentially a satire, and I don't know that that an AI can originate a script like that. They can emulate it, but the origination was by a brilliant screenwriter. And that, I think, is what we're all looking for when we do try to find something that will penetrate the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because I think, piggybacking on what both of you were talking about, I think art at its highest is actually absolutely a form of activism. We sometimes succeed where politicians fail. We unify people, we have treaties between companies, we do all sorts of things that other political entities can't manage to do. And machines can only reflect what we teach them, because at the end of the day, they are not humans. They are programmed. Well, when you can find a way to put an artificial intelligence into a robot that can live, maybe, we'll never have emotions, I hope. But, we'll see. Finance, from your point of view, as a senior debt lender.
Yeah, so we see tons of projects, and I think it's something it's definitely, there are way more projects than there is money in this space. So I think one of the things that we've been really good about is bringing private lenders and different institutions who've been too afraid to work in this space. So we've brought them in, I think done a pretty good job on educating why it makes sense to invest in film, how it is safe, to help get more projects made.
Can you elaborate on that? Because a film investment is high risk, so how are you convincing these people to do it and mitigating the risk itself?
Yeah, so there are banks that already do what we do, but as a private lender, we've had some institutions that we work with. So what we've done is, we've had to walk them through how all of this works. So we have every single project that we work on must be bonded. Unless we're doing just the tax credits, but for the most part, they all must be bonded, something that's super important to us. We do all of the diligence and underwriting, so making sure that the producers have worked and delivered projects before. We work with certain distributors. We know, we check financials from all of these different people that we're working with. We also work with sales companies, so we know that we're not the creative, and we also know that we aren't the ones who are doing any of the sales. So we let everyone else be the experts on those things, and we simply just underwrite all of them, and have had to educate all these institutions and private capital along the way of how all of this works. It's been a bit of hand-holding as expected, but I think that's certainly the way to do it.
And could you describe what a bond is for those who may not know?
Yeah, a completion bond, it's just a type of insurance to help the producer move along the way of, they have the bond in place to make sure that they're sticking to schedule, sticking with their budget, that there's not any significant overruns. That's something that's obviously very important to help complete the project, and making sure that you're staying on time in order to deliver to your different distributors.
And Mohammed, let's talk about how your world works.
Okay. Well, I love the way Effie started this panel, and I love what she said, although I would phrase it differently a little bit. I mean, the idea that failure is not an option. I actually think failure has to be an option, because if you're too afraid to fail, and in this business, it's all about taking risk in a way. And if you're too afraid to fail, then sometimes you'll just be very risk averse and will avoid risk. And I think that from my experience, coming from a region where there's been very little state support and soft money available, for example, it was all about private money. It was all about just passion, just really believing the project and finding the resources to make it happen. What is not an option in my dictionary is giving up. I mean, yes, you can fail, but you cannot give up, because if you want to survive in this industry, I think you can only learn from the missteps that you take along the way. So, in my experience, coming from a region where now it's kind of in its nascence, and you're seeing a lot of new initiatives in different territories in the Middle East, and it's actually in Africa as well. And in a way, it's exciting because it is probably the only growing theatrical market in the world right now, and specifically countries like Saudi Arabia, where there's a real surge in box office numbers. But there's also an infrastructure that's being put in place. And for me, trying to navigate that infrastructure of tax rebates, for example, or production incentives, a lot of new film festivals that are trying to set up funds and ways to finance and support films. So for me, this is really where we are seeing a way to mitigate risk, and this is one of the subjects that we're talking about today, right? How to use soft money, how to mitigate risk. I would love to see more, co-production treaties, for example, between the countries I work in. Like I come from.
And which countries are those, please? Could you?
So I work mostly across the Arab world, all the way from Jordan, Egypt, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, North Africa, Tunisia. I've done co-productions with Europe. I've done co-productions with the UK, and I find that really that it would be nice to have a more formal system of co-production treaties, for example, between. Egypt only has one co-production treaty with France. It doesn't have any co-production treaties with any other country. So it's hard to access the incentives and the public support that you may find in the European system. But that is happening more and more, and I think that this is the exciting part of working in my region right now. But it's challenging because we have still, if you, in terms of theatrical attendance, there's still, most countries are very, very low penetration of screens, very few screens in some countries. Egypt is traditionally the oldest industry in the region, more than 120 years old. We're seeing a surge in screens in countries like Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, but also the rest of the region. It's very, very small screen penetration at the moment. So there's a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of great opportunities, and I think it's a very exciting time to be a filmmaker in the region right now.
It is exciting. So let's talk about one of the, you mentioned the shift of police.
Okay, I'm trying to.
No, it's okay. We're amongst friends. So the current moment is one where a lot of decisions that are made inside of streamers are based on algorithmic output. How do you navigate that? How do you find? Because I think a great producer is someone who is first and foremost married to their instincts. How do you marry your instincts to this dependence, I would say, on algorithms, and how do you make a case for your projects inside of that? Effie?
That's really interesting. I have to say, we did a movie called Passing with Ruth Nega and Tessa Thompson and Alexander Stark. Thank you. And we just put money into it. Like Nina Yang Bonjovi produced it. I want to steal her shine. But if that was a movie where you're like, the algorithm was not looking for that movie. Do you know what I mean? The algorithm was not looking for Dear White People. The algorithm wasn't looking for certain things. We had to show them of like, I'm gonna serve it to you, and you like it, right? And then they let me know, and then all of a sudden, it changes the algorithm. That's how I see. Sometimes we have to, the machine doesn't know what it wants until you give it to them.
There you go.
So that is, and again, like I said, and I'm high-fiving you, you're absolutely right. Failure's not an option, but when I'm talking about failure, it's like giving up. Like you can't give up, I'm high-fiving you there.
Yeah.
But that's part of it, of being like the stories that you believe in, like you have to keep it moving. Whether the algorithm, Netflix, the streamers say whatever. However, this is a business, this is not a charity, it's show business. So I will also say I'm smart enough to realize who's gonna be in my movie, what's gonna make people put butts in seats, eyeballs on the screen. So I'm a little bit of my own algorithm, a little bit with my producing team, to see like who's gonna be in the movie, right? Who's gonna what's the sort of selling tool that will make people tune in.
Well, that was my next question. How much of a marketing case do you make before you walk a project in? Do you, David, make a strong marketing case?
It varies. I think the one thing I look for with breaking the algorithm is what AI can't recognize is flaws. And when you see a character who has flaws and the character, he or she speaks, the next line is something that you don't expect them to say, then you're onto something.
Right.
It's a little bit more unique, and I would say that's what I look for. Is yes, I love genre. Almost all my films are genre based because I love a first, second, and third act, a kind of lean-in factor where you want to keep your audience engaged because they have to find out how it's going to end. But also within that, characters that are doing things that their behavior is unexpected. So that's, seems to me to be the way to kind of drill down and find the type of content, let's call it, using that word, that.
Keep up with the times.
Yeah, I know. It's a nasty word, but the truth is that we are part of that ecosystem and we have to live within it. But finding those flaws in human beings' behavior, I think, is the most effective way to find it.
I love it, and I think that it's true. I mean, an algorithm is programmed. It's programmed. It's programmed by people, and people who have certain blind spots of their own prejudices, and they come through. I mean, you can see the ChatGPT and asking certain questions and answers in a way you're like, have you thought about this? I mean, I argue with the ChatGPT sometimes. I'm not
You're
well.
helping it.
I'm not well, but I'm trying to trade it late at night. I'm like, you're showing a lot of blind spots.
Or do you have a character that has no lines or has
Right.
very, very few lines, like Ryan Gosling cutting out lines out of Drive and just, you know, and he didn't need lines.
But then that becomes about the soul and the inner life. Yeah.
But you also have to
And
remember,
behavior.
you have to remember where we are in this timeline of AI. We're still at the very, very
Right.
beginning.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
it's how long will it be until AI can understand subtext or tone, or like David was saying about characters behaving in a way that almost seems off character, and that kind of thing. So I think right now AI, I see it as a very useful tool for breaking down plot, for research, for brainstorming, getting ideas, etc. But when it comes to the actual writing and keeping the subtext and like the nuances and subtleties of story and character, I think that's gonna it's gonna happen. I just see it not in the next 5 years, but I think eventually, yeah.
But I think anytime you sort of raise a sort of common level, it makes the artist have to work harder. So in a way, it's not gonna end anybody's need for a real artist, a human artist. It's just going to elevate
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
I think it's a
Yeah.
tool. I think it's a tool, and I also think it democratizes the industry wherever you are. Because I think with Midjourney, with Sora, with things where people, it's prohibitive to be like, I'm gonna do like a rip reel, or a sizzle, we call them, or a short. You're able to be like, I have time, because when you're a filmmaker, what do you got? Before you have somebody gives you money, you got nothing but time, right? Right? And to explain your vision, and to be able to make the images, and to be like, this is what's in my mind's eye, and this is how we're gonna execute it, and have the AI, like the Instagram, like, have them actually be able to manifest it. I think it's really extraordinary, and I think it opens the doors where they have been previously closed to a lot of folks.
And then
Exactly.
Chandler,
How do we get that money, Chandler? Right.
Your angle's a different one because you're dealing with finance numbers, things like that. You're using AI right now. How is that working?
Yeah, so our platform, one of the things you can do is you can submit to us through our website, and one of the things that it'll do is it'll automate and sort through what could potentially eventually qualify for us, or what currently already qualifies for us to work with you. So that certainly helps me. It saves quite a bit of time because we receive over $1 billion worth of qualified deal flow a year, so that's a lot of deals for me to sort through, and I don't have that time, and we're a small team, so it does take a little bit for us to go through all those things. So it'll let us know which ones could potentially qualify. So that helps out a little bit. Other ways that it's certainly helping us is with going through what some of the legal language might look like, and helping us match. Another thing with, this is a little bit separate, but it'll help us match who some of our lenders, which projects will work with certain lenders, because each one of our lenders, they all have different requirements and are looking for different things. So it helps certainly save a bunch of time, and then for the filmmaker, once we're in closing, that's time, it saves time, and it saves money.
All right. And do these things apply in your regions? I mean, are we still dealing with the same things?
Well, when it comes to completion bonds, for example, I remember one time in 2013, I was producing this film with UAE 2454, which is the media free zone, and like the media body of UAE, and they were co-financing our film. They said you have to get a completion bond, and back then I had almost no idea what a completion bond was, and I think until today, there's never been an Arab film that has received a completion bond, as far as I know.
That's
Any
interesting.
completion bond companies in the house that need to be reprimanded?
And that's something that I think has to change because, for example, right now,
Really?
I just became an advisor to a new film fund in Saudi Arabia. So I have a $100 million film fund that just started aiming to finance films from around the world. And obviously part of that would be trying to attract and grow the local, the local industry. And I think that without completion bonds and without that kind of infrastructure in place, it's going to be really hard to sustain the growth of film financing in the region. So this is something that I think is going to have to change in the coming years. It's just the way, like for example, in Egypt, for example, the way we produce films is just so different that the requirements for a completion bond company, it would be really hard to meet at this stage. We're going to have to.
You always have to have a regional specialist to attack
You
that.
have to really know the local industry and how it works, and the So it's going to take some time.
And you mentioned a very large sum of money, so I'm going to ask the question I know everybody here wants to know. How would they access this money in terms of story and partnership?
So it's, this fund is basically, the mandate is number one, to make money, and also to help the industry. But it's really, it's very simple. It's pretty straightforward. It's, the fund likes to take, a position that is not inferior in the recoupment waterfall. There's guidelines. I could be happy to share, more details, but
That's we're all like this.
Like really?
Yes, sir.
Can you really share more details?
it's still
We're
really,
like,
literally just kicked off in February. This is the actual.
Oh, so it's new.
We
It's
just
been
had our
announced?
first proper meeting like a week ago.
Oh, that's amazing. So this is really news for everybody here. This is great. And I think obviously we know that when things like this move along, they get shaped by the inquiries and by the doing of. So there'll probably be some interesting room for people who have the right stories to work with your colleagues. So let's talk about this is a good moment to segue into working with internationally. With the United States, of course, with the sort of descending budgets, has now been looking outside of itself to find ways to mitigate that. And we're finding shows that are set in the United States being shot in Ireland, South Africa, all over the place. Or if it's sci-fi fantasy, it doesn't matter where it's shot. Everything in those worlds is wherever it is. So have you worked with other regions?
I'm getting ready to. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm working on a film in Uganda called Mr. Ocean, and I'm super excited about that. It's a genre. It's I call it a Black Rocky. But then they're like, but all the Rockies are black now because of rape, but it's not. So I thought that's just alone. It's like a family sports epic. That's what we're calling it. So I'm really excited to be working in Africa, and so we've been working going to Durban and South Africa and Uganda and trying to figure out how to actually work. And what's helpful to us is with my producing partner is that in the States we're able to get maybe meaningful talent. And there's meaningful talent all over the world, but that's something that I could bring to the table, and also bringing in a certain amount of equity, right? Which is oftentimes hard money to get a hold of. And then I would be going to my new friend Chandler, right? You know what I mean? Like, hey girl, hey. And then, and Mo and his fun, because our filmmakers are from Uganda. Oh, this is all business. This is not a work. But that's one of the reasons that we're here and trying to figure out. Because in the United States, we don't have treaties. Like, there's so many, I won't even go into that. I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna sit it down. But they're looking for partnerships and how to have meaningful partnerships.